The definition of genocide is not met in Gaza by any stretch of the imagination. And you can cite to me, a group that I hadn't heard of until 2 seconds ago, and nobody had heard of until 2 seconds ago, that voted in a particular way. That doesn't make a difference definitionally.
Again, this is so fucking weaselly. He knows how fucking weaselly it is. All you have to do this yourself, right? Type in list of international organizations that say Israel is committing a genocide. Now, from my perspective, just the thing Charlemagne referenced alone, that's good enough for me. All of the genocide scholars, and I'm sure that the thing he said about, people signed up yesterday for that. No, that's fucking Hasbara Zionist bullshit lies to try to obfuscate from the fact that this group is correct. But it's 86% of genocide experts said this is a genocide. They voted on it. That's what they said, 86%.
In today's video, Kyle Kulinski absolutely destroys Ben Shapiro about Gaza on Secular Talk. Ben Shapiro's out here once again doing mental gymnastics to defend the indefensible, claiming that what's happening in Gaza isn't genocide. Now, Kyle Kulinski absolutely tears into this nonsense, but let's be real, the facts are already stacked against Ben Shapiro. So let's dive in and watch how Kyle Kulinski shuts down Ben Shapiro on Kyle Kulinski's show.
But if you don't want to believe that, which you should want to believe that, type in list of international organizations that say Israel is committing a genocide. And here's just some of them. Amnesty International. In December 2024, they said that. Human Rights Watch, same thing, December 2024. Doctors Without Borders, the International Court of Justice, UN Special Committee, International Association of Genocide Scholars, B'Tselem, which is a human rights group, the top Israeli human rights group. Physicians for Human Rights Israel, another Israeli group of doctors that say that's what it is. Oxfam, the Norwegian Refugee Council. You have all these different groups that say, look, that's what this is. And at this point, honestly, I think you're dishonest if you say it's not a genocide. I think it's just flat out dishonest because there's so much evidence. You would only need to follow what's going on. Pick any given week throughout the course of this genocide, just follow the news of what's happening on the ground for 1 week, and you'll come away with that. If you're honest, you'll come away with that take. But he's not honest. He's playing for a team, and he's a professional liar and obfuscator. That's what he is.
What does a genocide do?
A genocide is the attempt to forcibly destroy an entire population.
That is not the actual definition of genocide. Now, I think that's effectively what Israel is trying to do to the Palestinians in Gaza. But that's not the actual definition of genocide. If you go to the actual definition of genocide, it is the intentional destruction in whole or in part of a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. That's what it is. That's the definition. And for sure, you're hitting that definition. They're openly saying it. The list of comments from top Israeli government politicians and military officials, they were saying, Palestinians are human animals and they'll be treated as such. They're cockroaches. They're lower than cockroaches. They've openly dreamt about nuking them, thinking that would be a good idea. You had top officials saying we're going to cut off all food, fuel, water, and electricity going to the Palestinians, admitting we're going to do collective punishment for the actions of Hamas. By the way, there were only 30 or 40,000 Hamas members in Gaza, and when they said we're going to cut off all food, fuel, water, and electricity to all of Gaza, they were saying we're going to do that for over 2 million people. So punish over 2 million for the crimes of 30 or 40,000. That's what they said. And so there is no denying that that's what's going on. The intentional destruction, and we know that too, because they're talking about they've killed the actual number is probably at least 300,000, but they want to kill as many as they can and then ethnic cleanse the rest and send them to whether it's Libya or they've been in negotiations with different governments to try to send them there and then build the fucking Riviera, build Trump hotels and casinos on the beach. I mean, I've never seen a more textbook case of genocide. It's the most obvious thing I've ever seen in my life. They call Palestinians Amalek. Amalek is a story in the Bible where they say you even need to slay the women and the children of Amalek, the enemy. Like, show no mercy whatsoever, even to the women and the children and their fucking pets.
Yeah, Ben Shapiro's whole routine here is just smoke and mirrors. He's banking on people not actually looking at the definition of genocide or the overwhelming consensus from human rights groups. and legal scholars. The Genocide Convention doesn't require that an entire people be completely wiped out to qualify. It's about intent to destroy in whole or in part. And when Israeli officials are literally on record calling Palestinians human animals, cutting off food, water, and medicine for millions, and openly floating the idea of mass expulsion from Gaza, that's intent. That's not up for debate. That's documented. And the numbers speak for themselves. The UN has confirmed that more than half of Gaza's population has been displaced, entire neighborhoods leveled, and malnutrition rates skyrocketing among children because of deliberate blockades. Even the International Court of Justice, the world's top court, has said there's a plausible risk of genocide and ordered Israel to take immediate measures to prevent it. That's not fringe, that's not obscure, that's binding international law. So when Ben Shapiro dismisses all of this as some new group or random scholars, it's just classic deflection. The reality is, if you take the legal definition and put it side by side with what's happening in Gaza, it matches point for point. The only way you could deny it is if you're more interested in running cover than facing facts.
So it's not the attacks on like the personal facilities needed for like survival, like healthcare and educational institutions.
Well, again, Israel has shipped in more humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip than literally any army.
This is just total Hasbara bullshit lies. If anything, we're being too kind to the Palestinians because as we bomb them, we feed them. They've had an intentional policy of starvation. They literally announced starvation as a policy at one point. And that's why you see every day you get more deaths from starvation. You had a lot of deaths from malnutrition, from starvation. You see the pictures coming out of these kids are like little, skinny little bags of bones. It's fucking horrific. And here's Ben Shapiro saying, if anything, we feed them too much. Oh my God.
A population that supports the enemy in literally all of human history. They've been shipping in about 4,400 calories per day per person.
Yeah, that's Israel's problem. They're just too kind. They're too altruistic. They love the Palestinians too much. You know, it's like they sent them home. Here, have the turkey, have the pizza, and we're going to send you an apple pie and a cheesecake. That's the problem. We gave them too much food, bro. That's the issue.
The Gaza Strip, in the middle of a war in which the enemy is holding actual Israeli hostages underground, who, as we've seen from some of the pictures, are actually starving. Again, none of this is to claim that the war...
So somehow, the hostages are starving, but the Palestinians are actually fat and happy. I love how Israelis were showing this picture of, like, this starving hostage, and their big own was like, aha! See? And it's like, well, of course the hostage is starving, because everybody in fucking Palestine is starving, because you made it that way. It's also like, they did these mass bombing campaigns and killed some of their own hostages, and then went, oh, can you believe the hostages are dead under Hamas's control? Can you You just fucking bomb them! Oh my God. Again, this is so designed. He knows he's lying. He knows he's full of shit.
Pretty or meticulous or anodyne, because it isn't. It's really, really, really ugly. But over the course of this war, about 3% of the Gazan population has been killed or wounded. If you're going to look at an actual genocide, obviously the prototypical case being the Holocaust, you're looking at 50% of the entire Jewish population in Europe destroyed. If you're looking at other...
It's only 3%. What's the big deal? By the way, again, that's not even true. As we discussed, there were 2 million to 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza. And then now the actual death toll is about at least 300,000. That's according to a doctor who was in Gaza, but there's been reports that say it's at least 100,000. The official number of, I think it's at 62,000 now, is just completely and utterly outdated.
Now let's talk about the so-called humanitarian aid. Israel doesn't get credit for tossing a few trucks of flour into Gaza while simultaneously enforcing a blockade that deliberately starves people. The UN and World Food Program have both confirmed that famine conditions are worsening, with kids literally wasting away in front of cameras. And it's not just malnutrition. We're talking about Israel bombing bakeries, destroying farms, cutting off electricity that powers water pumps and hospitals. That's not feeding people too much. That's weaponizing basic survival. On the death toll, even conservative UN estimates say tens of thousands are dead, the majority women and children, and hundreds of thousands more injured. And when you add in those who will die from starvation, disease, and lack of medical care caused by the siege, the toll skyrockets even higher. Doctors in Gaza have been reporting bodies stacked in hospital corridors, amputations without anesthesia, and children dying from dehydration because Israel cut off clean water. So when Ben Shapiro shrugs and says, only 3%, he's not just wrong on the numbers, he's willfully ignoring that the very policies of collective punishment, mass displacement, and ethnic cleansing openly declared by Israeli officials are exactly what genocide scholars point to as evidence of genocide. This isn't semantics, it's reality.
And by the way, that's what happens in genocides, is in real time, the medical infrastructure can't keep up because they're under an existential threat and they've been bombed just like everybody else. They don't have the ability to do the data collection on a regular basis. So the Gaza Health Ministry number, which they smear as, oh, that's a Hamas number, that's actually a drastic undercount to what it really is. And in fact, Trump and Netanyahu admitted, oh, we got to get the rest of the people out of Gaza. That's like 1.7 million people or so. So if before it was 2.3 million and now it's 1.7 million, look at what they're saying. They're saying they killed hundreds of thousands of people there.
To genocides, say the genocides in Rwanda, you're talking about extraordinarily high percentages of the population that are wiped out. You certainly are not seeing procedures that require 4 layers of actual legal authority in order to do a drone strike. I've actually seen the tape of them doing this in Israel. They actually, if they spot from the air a terrorist who's going into a particular civilian area, you have to take like a full minute where the pilot on the drone calls up the legal authority, who then calls up the higher legal authority to get clearance for the actual drone strike, and they will call off the drone strike if they believe that the military target is too costly in terms of civilian casualties.
This is literally the worst lie I've ever heard in my life. This is actually the worst lie. Okay, just a couple examples. The IDF dressed up like doctors, went into a hospital in Gaza and started shooting people. There's one example. Another example is they just bombed a hospital. And this was recent. This was this month. They bombed a hospital. Then they bombed the first responders who were trying to save the lives of the people who they bombed in the hospital. So they did a double tap, killed the people in the hospital. I think it was journalists in this instance. Then they killed the people who were trying to save the lives of the journalists after the fact, the fucking like Red Cross workers. Those are just 2 examples. How about this one? You remember this? This was early on in the genocide, and it was reported that there's this refugee camp, and there were like 100 people in this building, and Israel leveled the building, and then Israel said, yeah, we killed those 100 people because we were trying to get one Hamas guy. I'm not kidding. In fact, even Wolf Blitzer was fucking astonished at what was being said. Here we go.
Back now to our breaking news here in the Middle East. A massive explosion at the largest refugee camp in Gaza. Joining us now is Lieutenant Colonel Richard Hecht. He's the international spokesperson for the Israel Defense Forces. Thanks so much for joining us. I want to ask you first about this massive blast that we all just saw. We saw the video at the Jabalia refugee camp in Gaza. Is there anything more you could first of all tell us about how this explosion happened?
Hi, Wolf. Thanks for having me. So we'll be coming out in the next, hopefully, hour with more data, but I can update you.
By the way, indigenous to the region, right, with that accent. This is definitely his home.
Now that there was a very senior Hamas commander in that area. Sadly, he was hiding, again, as they do, within civilians. And that's all I can say at this point. We're looking into it, and we'll be coming out with more data as we learn what happened there.
So can you confirm it was an Israeli attack that destroyed a big chunk of that Jabalia refugee camp?
Yes, I can. We were focused again on our target, a senior commander, Wolf, and we'll be updating you with more data as the hour moves ahead.
But even if that Hamas commander was there amidst all those Palestinian refugees who are in that Jabalia refugee camp, Israel still went ahead and dropped a bomb there, attempting to kill this Hamas commander, knowing that a lot of innocent civilians, men, women, and children, presumably would be killed. Is that what I'm hearing?
Here's the kicker. Israel's track record doesn't match their PR spin. The UN, Amnesty International, and Human Rights Watch have documented repeated double tap strikes where they bomb a target, then hit it again when first responders show up. That's not about avoiding civilian casualties. That's about maximizing them. In April alone, reports came out that at least 15 paramedics were buried with their ambulances by IDF strikes. How does that square with layers of legal review? Then there's the hospital attacks. CNN itself confirmed a triple tap strike that killed journalists and aid workers, not militants, not Hamas leaders, journalists and medics. And this is on top of Israel's open starvation policy. UN officials warned months ago that Gaza is facing full-blown famine. The idea that Israel is feeding Palestinians too much, which Ben Shapiro actually said is just grotesque when the images show kids wasting away from hunger. And that Wolf Blitzer interview is so telling. Wolf, who isn't exactly known for grilling US allies, was visibly stunned when the IDF spokesman casually admitted they knowingly killed scores of civilians. That's the moment the mask slips. They aren't accidentally hitting civilians. They're making a calculation. Palestinian lives simply don't count. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out ground news in the description down below.